Debunking Mud Flood, Part 2. If you haven't seen the first installment in this mini-series, then you might not get what's going on. Anyway,
the main
Mud Flood, Poland. Krakow hidden history. My God. Let me not get frustrated here. Anyway, let's see what this gentleman has to say.
in the Krakow, and here we can find something really interesting. Let's go. Let's go and let's see. Look. Look here. This is the original level of the church. What happened in the past?
So, this is one of those so-called evidences for mud flood, right? If you come into this research that people say they do with this preconceived notion of mud flood existed and Tartaria existed, then obviously that's going to color your conclusions and confusion. But all of this is very easy to explain. You just have to try. Instead of just assuming that it is what these Russian PSYOP, what this Russian PSYOP operation has presented, right? And look, a lot of the people pushing this stuff have no idea what it is that they're doing, right? It only takes a handful of people to put that out there, and then naive people who are just, been lied to their entire lives and are sick and tired of being taken advantage of and deceived. Yeah, they'll let their imaginations run wild, and they'll believe just about anything, right? Just because somebody gets censored or gets ridiculed, right? That doesn't give them credibility, right? That's not how you get credibility. That's, I believe, an argument from ignorance fallacy. The way you are supposed to gain credibility is by being credible. Is this stuff credible? No. And it's very easy to explain. So, I lived in Chicago for a long time, and there are a lot of homes, especially on the southwest side, especially near the river, especially near the lake, where a similar thing can be observed. Check it out.
1848 North Howe has a richly detailed limestone facade reminiscent of many Parisian city homes, with its implied second-floor balcony, the rounded transoms over the first-floor French doors, and the metal-roofed dormer at the roof.
So this house is probably 120, 150 years old or something like that, maybe a little bit more. And you see it has like a little staircase to the first floor, right? That probably used to be the second floor.
Line. It also has very intricately designed ironwork at the front. Very intricately designed ironwork at the front. M Design, our stagers, have just finished staging the 6,500 square feet. So I'd love to show you the house. Come on, let's go inside.
So here we are inside of that house. We are in what's called a half basement, which is a real thing. It's how they used to build a lot of homes. Those were servants' quarters, right? Maybe there were, furnaces, heaters in there as well, things of that nature, in order to save space, right? And to reserve prime real estate, right? First, second, third floor, rooftop, all that fancy stuff for the family. and not the servants, who obviously didn't deserve it. They built these half basements so could get some. This is just a design feature of a lot of homes. So a lot of this stuff that you see where people are saying, oh, the windows got buried, right? If the windows aren't literally in the ground, right, and dug up, which that has happened too, but they're above ground and they're just small, and they're just barely above ground, right, but high up when you're inside. This is just the way they used to build homes, and they still do, some of them. This is just what it is. This isn't mud flood. This is has very good reasons for why they did this. It's an architectural design, right? But at the same time, you will find windows, maybe even windows of this nature, that have been dug up. More so when it comes to much older buildings than this one here, right? So that could have been servants' quarters also, like designed this way. Or, as shown in the previous video, yeah, the building got buried slowly over time. And at some point they had to do something about it, right? Because they didn't want it flooding, so they dug them up and did whatever it is they had to do, right? So, and you'll find both of this in Chicago. Let's see if I can find some more evidence of this. So this mansion in Chicago was built in 1894. Check it out.
Hey guys, welcome to another video. And this time we are in the historic district of Perry Avenue, and this is the original Millionaires Row in Chicago. Before the ghost,
you see him stepping up, right?
This is where the elite and the wealthy lived.
And once again, you have steps up to the first floor. What is the first floor now? And then you have, servants' quarters or whatever, right? So you have a house on the left which is not as old as the house on the right, and it has this like half basement, right? But you see the windows, it's not dug into the level where this man is standing, right? It looks to have been basically built right there with these servants' quarters, which just is what it is. But then the one on the right seems to have the same type of servants' quarters, except maybe they had to be dug out, right? Because you see there's a hole there, right? Maybe we could get a better picture.
So over the years, this area has seen a lot of transformation. So warehouses, parking lots, and factories took over a lot of these, replaced a lot of these beautiful mansions. And this is one of the only historic mansions that's still in the area. And it's actually the only property in this entire historic district that has been continuously used as a residence. So it's a very, very special home.
Pretty cool. So you see, it seems to have been dug out to some degree.
I love the facade of this home. The cream-colored brick and the terracotta, the limestone combination, it just makes it look so...
There it is, right? You clearly see there's a... Well, what happened there?
We are here in Chicago's Pilsen neighborhood, where you may have noticed some of the homes seem a little sunken below the street and the sidewalk level. And it's why Shale from Evanston asks, how come in some Chicago neighborhoods the streets seem so high? Yeah, so why do we seem to have sunken homes in Chicago?
It's like, is it a low house or is it a high street is the question, right? In the 1850s, Chicago launched a major project to raise the streets. It's basically about the same height as Lake Michigan. And so the problem with that, of course, is drainage. If it rained, the city was just awash in mud. You had stagnant water. And with that, you had pathogens and creating disease such as cholera and typhoid.
Stagnant water, right? So that house from 1895 or whatever it was, they probably just built it like that, right? Or maybe the project hadn't gotten to it yet and was still raised a little bit, right? They did build the servants' quarters, and they had to dig it up a little bit because, or not, when they raised the street level, they had to find a way to protect those windows somehow, right? So, stagnant water, right? We were talking about this town hall in Poland, where the street level was lower than what it used to be, and you could see that there are irregularities there, right? Now it's all flat, level, and it has drainage put in, right? In order to put the drainage in, they could either level, I mean, the way you level it, right, is by taking some material out here and there and then putting that material out somewhere else. Or putting it, raising the level and lowering the level. But you see a big old puddle right in front of City Hall, right? Unsightly, probably stinky, right? Dirty. It was a problem in a lot of these old cities. This is just, this shit's so simple, man. I'm sorry.
And it's not just that people got sick, people were dying. Something had to be done.
In 1855, the Chicago City Council decided to raise the streets up to 14 feet above lake level. That meant adding mounds under and around existing buildings. The process took 20 years to complete. So how do you lift up an entire building?
The men would surround the base of a building, each one with their own jack screw, stuck it under the building. There would be an engineer in charge. He'd give the signal, and they would all start pumping on.
Oh, bullshit. Impossible, right? That could never be done. That's just lies. Don't be so naive, right?
He's capturing all the lights.
So this is just Amish, right? Taking it from one place to another. I lived in a San Francisco house that had been moved up like something like 100 meters up a hill from somewhere else. Relocated from one neighborhood to the next. I lived inside of one of those houses. Right? So don't say it's very possible. You just gotta, use your imagination, do some research, right? This is Amish men lifting a barn by hand, right? And moving it over irregular, uneven terrain, right? The people in Chicago had hydraulic jacks. There were more of them probably. And all they were doing was lifting it up so they could put, a stone foundation under it. So on and so forth, as the land was getting backfilled, right? So, there's an interesting Wikipedia article about the raising of Chicago streets and how they moved a lot of homes. Some people couldn't afford, or there were not enough resources to move some of these homes, so they protected them from getting buried, right? They looked like they were dug out when they were never buried in the first place, right? Raising business blocks. So someone is advertising in the Daily Tribune in 1858, right? That they will raise your crib. During the 19th century, the elevation of the Chicago area was little higher than the shoreline of Lake Michigan, right? No drainage and flooding. So those homes on the southwest side are very close to and alongside the Chicago River, which would flood because that's what rivers do, right? Lake Street, right? Why do you think it's called Lake Street? Yeah, it's amazing what human ingenuity and engineering can do. So But it's easier to say, oh, well, I don't know how this could have been done, or I can't do it myself, so these people couldn't have done it either. I mean, we have this idea that we're somehow at the pinnacle of human intelligence, development, and resourcefulness and technology. Like everything is better than it's ever been before, and everyone that came before us was dumber, right? Which is crazy and completely antithetical to reality, because as I asked you in another video, a couple of videos ago, can you make a stone tool like people tens of thousands or 10,000 years ago were able to do, right? Imagine how much dumber they must have been following this nonsensical worldview, right? And yet they could do things you couldn't do, right? So going back to this Polish church that this guy is calling, is part of mud flood, right? This is where it's located. Really? This is it, right? Landmark basilica with 2 towers. If you zoom out, well, what do you know? Right near the Vistula River, right? Does this bend, right, that's right in the middle of your screen, does that look natural to you? Well, it's somewhat natural because there's a castle on a hill here, right? And the river can't go over the hill. The years, depending on rainfall and development, what have you, this river, right, used to go up through here, through Old Town. All this green you see in the center, right, all the way out to this here, that's all landfill. This is all well known, right? So these 2 green spots, right, these little city parks, the river used to run through there. And if it would, even recently, maybe 100 years ago or something like that, if the flooding and the rains were very, very severe, this hill over here would become an island, right? So this is a very unnatural, this is man looking to control nature. The bend there in the river is very unnatural. Surely it used to go up above and around, right? Depending on the level of the water in the river. And this is well known, right? It should be anyway, that all this here, right? I'm sure you can imagine this river going in river water always finds the easiest way to flow, right? The lowest. It flows from high to low. And in case I didn't make it clear, it's flowing from the left to the right, right? So you could imagine how that little bend there around the hill would used to, if not all the time, sometimes, right, rivers change their course, used to connect in more of a straight line, or both, right? And it's also documented that when it would flood a lot, that's exactly what happened, even very, very recently, maybe 100 years ago. So if this here was filled, right, all the way to here, to this green part, if all of that is to some degree filled and raised, the same way Chicago was, right, why couldn't this have been at least a little bit? But maybe it wasn't. Maybe since that church has been there for something like 600 years, I want to say. No, more than that. Maybe 800 years, right? It's been reconstructed many times. It's been renovated. It's been changed. But the original structure has been there, I don't know, somewhere between 500 and 1,000 years, right? Is it that difficult to imagine that throughout history, with the region constantly that area flooding constantly and there not being any paved streets or anything, just mud, that the mud would build up over many centuries and eventually cover some of the lower parts that had to be dug out once the river was controlled, more or less? Is it that difficult to imagine? And there, we know all of this. This isn't like hidden history or anything stupid like that. This is just what happens, right? Which isn't to say that, you know, this is exactly what happened in all these other places. But whenever you're investigating this mud flood, okay, look for bodies of water, right? But this is why these psyops or these nonsense theories grab hold of people's minds, because to some degree they make sense, right? They do have to do with flooding, right? Let me show you what used to happen to Krakow, at least since the advent of photography, right? So look at this. This is the Wawel, right? I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Yeah, that's the castle on the hill there, right? Look at it. Look at how flooded everything is, right? So this is some park right around there too, I'm pretty sure. I don't know exactly, but look at it, right? Flooding. This is in 1920s, 1930s, right? Another park completely flooded, or the same park, right? Buildings flooded. You see the servants' quarters on the left? You see that? They're building, they put some kind of, it looks just like maybe a bridge to walk on, right? But maybe at some point they started building stuff up to protect from this, right? Raising the curbs, doing whatever they had to do to keep the water from flowing in there, right? At least, you know, not to say that they could have done enough to prevent against all floods, especially the one where the water level rises, you know, meters and meters, but small flood, whatever, just lots of rain, water running down the street from the rain, right? You could imagine how with this sort of building design people would build up the street to protect the windows from flooding. Not some great global one-time or cyclical global mud flood event, right? But just constant flooding because you live next to a river, right? Like, welcome to reality, people. I mean, do you not know how life works, right? Get off the fucking computer, no offense to anybody, go outside and go talk to old people, for example, right? Here again, you have these windows that are at ground level, right? Where maybe you store potatoes or coal for the furnace, right? So you dump it in there and it's easier that way, right? You could once again imagine why they may want to build up the curb, build up the, or just the curb, right? Or raise street levels everywhere in order to prevent this sort of thing from happening. Right? Once again, you got these basement windows over there. And you could kind of see maybe they added a little curb or maybe it was already there. But you could see how 20 centimeters more and the basements, the half basements, are flooded, right? So you got to do something about that. I always find it interesting looking at what people looked like back in the day, right? Just whole huge parts of the city flooding, right? We're once again very close to this church. I believe it's behind the castle back there. Yeah, that would make sense, right? Rivers flood. It's what they do, right? They're building fortifications to keep the river in, right? You could battle Mother Nature by building a wall or digging out the river, building a wall around it also, right? And continuing this level so that the wall doesn't collapse on you. Because, I mean, this isn't fucking rocket science, man. I'm shocked at how naive and gullible people are, right? So this is just another example of how explaining to you why some of these old buildings look the way they do, right? So if you have this theory, this mud flood theory of global mud flood cataclysm, right, that happened at around the same time all over the globe, various places all over the globe, right, you're gonna have to have more than just pictures of buildings that are partially buried, right? What is the more likely theory? Well, this isn't even a theory. This is just what happens, right? This is fact. This is history. This is logical. This is reasonable. This is very, very believable. How believable is this idea of a great reset mud flood that happened simultaneously all over the world? You're gonna have to provide us with how it happened, right? Why do you believe this? How is it that all of this happened? And then you're gonna have to tell us why these buildings weren't dug out, why it wasn't cleared up, right? If you're talking about liquefaction, you're going to have to explain how these buildings weren't destroyed, because that's akin to an earthquake, right? The theory doesn't make any sense. You're being brainwashed with the idea of periodic great resets, so that on some level you accept the Great Reset, World Economic Forum Great Reset. That's what this is about. And it could be that they're gonna give us some kind of quote-unquote cataclysm, because geoengineering is real, right? And they've been talking about this forever anyway, right? Stop breathing, stop consuming, stop eating meat, because Mother Earth is angry. And Mother Earth is going to do something about it. Look at all these cataclysms everywhere. Look at all these floods. It's your fault. We need a great reset. Is it making sense yet? It should be. So yeah, this is just another explanation. Well, more than one, right? Just more explanations for why a lot of these old buildings look the way they do, which completely and utterly destroys this myth of mud flood. And I know there's a lot of energy vampires out there, grifters, inertia generators, that will just call anything mud flood because they know it gets the clicks, and that's how they get paid. And that's how you perpetuate this nonsense. And videos such as this one are not going to get a lot of views. Why? Because all the mud flood researchers aren't scientifically minded at all. Because what a science... I'm not even saying that this is science, right? But scientists are supposed to try to debunk their own hypothesis. This mud flood shit isn't even a theory. It's just a hypothesis. And it's just nonsense by now, as it's thoroughly debunked. But because, again, people who quote-unquote research this stuff aren't doing it honestly, looking to debunk their preconceived notions. They're doing the exact opposite. They're looking to confirm their biases. So it's completely pseudoscientific and illogical, invalid. Mud flood is nonsense. This is what happened. Stay tuned. Thank you for watching. There will be more. Oh, I need to get in the groove on this channel. Give the video a like, please. I mean, it would be great if everybody that watched the video gave it a like. You know, it would help the channel out. But it is what it is. I'm gonna try to do better to ask people to do that. Alright? So stop taking credit for your father's good deeds, and don't blame the son for his father's sins. Thank you for watching.